Hey there. So the last 2 days we've been working on going through these slides. We've also done a little bit of extra vocab review. So let's get started. So what you're going to do is you are going to get out your chart that you have filled out with your Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic age information. Okay, and you're going to check and make sure that you have everything on there that we have on the slides. There's going to be one or two things that you can add, but otherwise just sit and enjoy the show, I guess. All right, so we're going to start with that Paleolithic age. So we have the Old Stone Age, and people were nomadic. So pause the video and find somebody to tell them, what does nomadic mean? Okay, nomadic means that they're moving around. They don't have a permanent home. Okay, all right, so they also lived in clans of 20 to 30 people. I know that in one of the readings it said 20 to 60 people for Paleolithic age. That is also acceptable to have on your page. Okay, all right, so men hunted and fished. Women gathered wild fruits, nuts, and roots. And people depended entirely on their environment for their survival, especially the climate. So if we had an early freeze, and so some of the berries, you weren't able to collect them, tough luck. Okay, so that's what it means that that the climate really affects what they can eat. So the climate, you would also move around a lot to make sure that you are getting all the food that you need. All right, so they also made simple tools and weapons out of materials at hand. So they would use some stone, some bone, and wood. Okay, so it's really simple tools. And they've developed a spoken or oral language. They invented clothing by wrapping animal skins around their bodies to protect themselves from the environment. They also lived in caves and built fires. So the reason that they used fires, at least at first, was to scare away animals. Later they figure out, hey, we can warm up with this and we can cook food with this, but first it is to scare away those animals. All right, Paleolithic age and cave art. Okay, so cave art you will find all over Europe, Asia, Australia, and Africa. The most common things that you will see in cave art, the most common motifs, are painted deer, horses, buffalo, bulls, cows, and stick figure people. They're usually deep in the caves that we find them in. And the main colors were red and black with a little yellow, maroon, and violet. And the paint was made out of materials ground into animal fats. So they would grind up like roots and sometimes flowers, sometimes berries, and they would grind it in with animal fats because then animal fats are easier to spread. That you're going to see here are in a cave in Lascaux, France. Okay, so here's a picture of some painted bison. And feel free to pause and take an extra look if you want. Stag and reindeer. Great Hall of Bulls. And there's some bulls here that are, and some red and brown horses. So there's the bull, there's the horses. Okay, there's a red bull. Your classmates were pretty impressed with this one. They thought this one was really good. Swimming stags. And here's two bulls. There's a horse. A group of bulls and horses and stags. 5 horses and a cow. Alright, now, what type of materials did early man use to paint on the walls of the caves? Pause it and tell somebody. What colors were used on, or the most in cave art? Pause it and tell somebody. In what part of the world is most cave art found? Pause it and tell somebody. Right. Which one was your favorite painting? Why? How realistic or abstract are the paintings of early man? What could this tell us about them? Why do you think early man chose the subjects or the objects of the paintings that they did for their drawing/painting? Now we are on religion in the Paleolithic age. Cave art. Was it religious? It probably had some religious significance, but we don't know. We can't know for sure. Small stone statues of pregnant women. So it's pretty common, especially in ancient cultures, to have like Mother Earth figures, and they're typically thought to be for fertility, maybe survival, we're not really sure. They often buried their dead. And then for animism, that is the belief that the world was full of spirits and forces that might reside in animals, objects, or dreams. All right, now we are on the Mesolithic age. That's that middle Stone Age. And this is when groups of people started to settle and stay in one place, but not permanently. So for example, even into the 1800s, we would have examples of Native Americans here in the Americas that would have seasonal camps. So they would go to certain places to camp for the winter, certain places to camp for the summer, certain places for the fall, that sort of a thing. All right, Neolithic age, the new Stone Age. And this is where we're learning how to farm, which allowed us to stay in one place. And then we have what's called slash and burn agriculture. So what happens is you would harvest your crop and then you would burn what's left. This is actually a pretty common agricultural practice here today. So sometimes you'll see farmers burning their fields in the fall especially. That's the type of agriculture that they're doing. They're doing slash and burn agriculture. All right, and they also started to build permanent villages. They developed advanced tools. So remember, we start doing very simple tools in the Paleolithic era. Then with the Mesolithic era, we get that bow and arrow. That's very important. That's a big step up in weapons. Hand-to-hand combat. That is a big step up because you can shoot from farther away. You can at least feel safer when you are hunting or when you're making war. All right. Okay, then we have domesticated plants and animals. Find someone to tell them what domesticated means. Or you can tell yourself out loud. Okay, so domesticated means tamed. So it means that you can control better plants and animals. And actually the first animal that was domesticated was most likely dogs. So they were most likely wolves, and then people were able to domesticate them somehow, and then we started using them as mostly as workforces, like to pull things or carry things, and sometimes for guard and companionship too eventually. All right, then we have pottery and weaving skills. This is when we start to see pottery and woven like clothing or maybe even baskets. It depends on what area you're seeing. All right, Neolithic age. This is also the agricultural revolution, so we're changing from that hunting and gathering to farming now. Okay, this led in a growth of the population. So it does mean that sometimes there is a decline in women's status because most societies went to a patriarchal society format. So patriarchal or patriarchy is when men are in charge. Men control the family, economic, and political life. Also this agricultural revolution led to trade, of wealth. Is you're able to trade for better types of clothing. Maybe you're able to trade for certain types of jewelry, that kind of a thing. All right, then you lead that to the development of new technology. So this would include calendars, plows, arrowheads, axe heads, all kinds of different technologies there. All right, now we're going to look at Stonehenge here, an archaeological site in England built during the Neolithic period. It was finished during the Bronze Age. So if someone says that they've been to Stonehenge, that means that they have been in England at some point, because you have to go to England to see Stonehenge in person. Next we have Aleppo and Jericho. Aleppo and Jericho are examples of early cities in the Fertile Crescent studied by archaeologists. All right, so when we talk about the Fertile Crescent, this is map of the Fertile Crescent. So over here is Egypt, and here is parts of Asia. And I'll switch to another map so that you can see where it is in relation to the rest of the world better. So here's Africa, here's Asia, here's Europe. Right here is that Fertile Crescent. Okay. All right, back to our other slides here. All right. Now we have Catahouyuk. Catahouyuk is an example of a Neolithic settlement currently under excavation in Anatolia in Turkey. Okay, so Catahouyuk is in Turkey. That is in Europe. All right, now we're going to compare Paleolithic versus Neolithic. For Paleolithic, we have hunting and gathering. For dwellings, we have caves and we have nomadic people. What does nomadic mean again? Pause and tell yourself or whoever's by you. Nomadic means that they do not have permanent dwellings. Technology, digging sticks, spears, axes, and spoken language. And for religion and art, they have cave paintings, religious statues, and a belief in an afterlife. All right, Neolithic. For food, they have farming, and they've domesticated animals. Okay, so what does domesticate mean? Tell yourself or whoever's close to you. Okay, so domesticate means that you've tamed it. You have some control over it. Okay, so you can domesticate both animals and plants. So when you have a domesticated plant, you have a crop of that plant. You are able to plant it, and you have at least a reasonable chance of that plant growing in the spot that you planted it. All right, dwellings. Permanent villages, stone houses. For technology, we have stone tools, polished axe heads, arrowheads, weaving cloth, calendars, and wheels. We also have plows, like we mentioned earlier. All right, religion and art. Jewelry, we see jewelry more often then, and then they bury their dead in earthen tombs. So that means that they bury their dead, just like a lot of people do today. Okay, so that's pretty much everything that we've been doing over the past 2 days. Just work on studying that sheet. That'll have a lot of your information that you need. And also look back at Ötzi. Why was he important? And why was Louis Leakey important as well? And later this week we'll be taking our test. All right, hope you have a good day.